without further ado, everyone, Healthcare 360, 360 Nation, I want to introduce someone to you who I have been sneaking up on for the last couple months. As everyone knows that I do, I look for the atypical person, the atypical standout in healthcare that really understands what the differences are. So I'm going to go into a little bit of a dialogue here, a short one, because I want to get into more information, just jump right into it. But Dr. Christina Ram, I've been following her on LinkedIn and what she's doing in her practice, and I've been following her website and just different things. We had a pre-discussion. That pre-discussion probably could be posted on its own. We probably don't need to do this. But being the way I am, I'm going to refine it, and we're going to kind of like not control, because that's what I don't want. I want this to be free-flowing and go, go, go. But I'm telling you, we have someone in front of us that we're watching on YouTube or listening to now that we're extremely lucky to have. Extremely lucky to have. What she's done in her educational studies, what she's done on the research side of the business as well, what she does in her professional career in helping people is second to nobody. Okay? So I'm going to read through a few little things. I will put this all in the podcast notes, and I'll probably even try something a little bit different. I'll talk to my magic maker, who's the editor, and maybe we'll flash this up on the YouTube site as well. Dr. Christina Ram, a world-renowned scientist. She spent many, many years as a medical and clinical science in the pharmaceutical and biotechnology companies. She spent a significant time there growing, studying, acknowledging. She has a focus in nanotechnology, and that's where a lot of the today we're not just going to camp out there, but it's going to dance around that topic point, because she has over 20 patents in nanotechnology. She understands, for example, vitamin C. We can all have an abundance in vitamin C, but how do you make vitamin C effective, and how to make it work on a cellular level more optimally? Okay. I want to attack questions today about how we can help moms, how we can help people who are going through stress, how we can help people who have high adrenal gland activation, how to go to bed a little bit easier, things of that nature. We're also going to dive into some other topics, okay? And let me kind of give everyone a little bit of a recap of here. Without naming some names, there's some things that she's aligned herself with, where there are some very high profile people that she has some understandings of. She can kind of tap into that a little bit, exchanging energy and what energy does. That's a real big one, because there's a lot of science now moving in that direction. So without further ado, Dr. Ram, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. You're a superstar. Everything I read, it's amazing. Really, really feel fortunate to have you on the show. Thank you for being available.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on your show. And I've had the opportunity to look into what you're doing and to watch some of the people that you've had on your show. And I'm very impressed. And I think it's wonderful what you guys are doing to really show in a positive way healthcare overall, but also addressing issues so that we can find solutions to healthcare.
Yeah. Actually, to give everyone a little bit of a we just confirmed that we have the #1 adult cardiac surgeon coming on the show. I'll leave the name out there, but actually I won't. Dr. Joe Lamelas at the University of Miami. He just confirmed that he's going to come on the show, and get ready for that one, because we're going to talk about heart issues and what they're doing on the minimal invasive side versus cracking a sternum, and the technology that's going into that. It's going to be great. So anyways, not to take anything away from you, please, let's jump into it. I can't wait.
That's exciting to have him on the show.
Yeah, it's really cool. I want to talk about your role, what you do, what you've done, and I want to talk about real quickly, because I know this is going to explode really, really fast, because you're an encyclopedia right in front of our eyes. So you talked about, as a female in pharmaceutical biotech, Harvard University studies, suppressing information. When you're on their side, they're like, rah, rah, rah. When you're not on their side, they're trying to steal everything away from you. Let's talk about that environment, and let's talk about what you've done and overcome with your patents and everything else. Very loaded question, but I know we're going to dance around this. So tell us a little bit about yourself in the background. We'll lead into that, and then we'll move out.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I spent I spent most of my adult career in working, but also in college at the same time, because a lot of the biotech and pharma would send me back to school or have me work in their labs or train, which has been a phenomenal experience because there's things you can learn from a textbook. And I took a lot of those classes. But there's also things you learn from actually working with biotech and pharma. And back in my 20s, I was young when biotech and stem cell therapies were kind of controversial. And now, because they're human monoclonal antibodies, and you're really just using different types of science, different types of technology like nanobiotechnology to use monoclonal antibodies, either human, or we also use like mouse DNA, which is called murine, and different other types to program cells to go into the body to kill certain diseases or to kill certain cells that cause diseases so that the body's function, better and that you don't die. And so I had the privilege of working in medical clinical science, the majority of my career in biotech and pharma, but also I had experiences in sales and marketing and reimbursement. So I really kind of grew up, in that environment. And I realize now I was very fortunate. I really loved the companies I worked for. I worked for phenomenal companies like Pfizer, Biogen, Alexion, UCB, on and on and on. Just really good companies. I got to work with Bristol Myers Squibb on antivirals, vaccines, things like that for HIV and hepatitis. But most of my career was focused on immunology and oncology, hematology. And I'm very, very fortunate. Worked with the top doctors in this country and in the world because we would be able to launch these studies. And because I was on the medical and clinical side, I got to work with just brilliant, brilliant people. And so I think one of the reasons I know a lot is not because of myself, but because of them. And I was treated amazing. So I can't have I can't say anything negative about my time and how I was treated by those companies. And I think those companies do amazing things for a lot of people. I want to stop, and I know you and I have talked about this, Scott, because we both had traditional healthcare experience. Sure. And then we've been exposed to everything outside of that as well. Without biotech and pharma and medical devices, and we wouldn't be able to do things like minimally invasive cardiovascular surgeries or knee surgeries or spine. Right? Well said. Yep. It's you have to have it, and your level of professionalism in those areas are here. Like I just have to tell you, it's amazing. And then unfortunately, sometimes on the alternative medicine side, because it is controversial and it is hard, it's not mainstream. I think that's the word I want to use. You sometimes you attract, renegades or people that are willing to make a stance that is not mainstream. That's not just what everyone else is believing. But I think because I was in the biotech arena when it wasn't, people hadn't accepted it yet. It wasn't really mainstream. And I think, you shared some of your background with me. Being in the medical device world is kind of like that too. You've got people that are following mainstream, but they're also kind of a little bit of an outlier, so you have to be, because you have to be, and I don't mean to, I'm just going to tell you, to be in those leadership roles or to make money in those roles, you have to be extremely intelligent and extremely driven. You don't have people that are successful in those arenas. And because of that, you are helping people. But because there's so much money in that arena, they do protect their own. But without that shield, if you go outside and leave that protection, it's like you're even more not protected than you would have been if you were never in there in the first place, because you left there. It's kind of like leaving a sorority or fraternity and you're like, I'm no longer in this club. I'm going to look outside of this club. And so I think healthcare is the same way. You have this amazing environment that's professional in the biotech and pharma, and we have all these solutions. But the truth is, the nutraceutical supplement world, the alternative medicine world, the stem cell world, all of that stuff, there's amazing solutions that we don't tap into. And why? Well, you probably know this, and I definitely know this as well. Vitamin C, if it's not owned by a pharmaceutical company with billions of dollars of backing behind it to hire the best attorneys in the world to back it and to support it, then you're out there hanging on your own. And the big giant is going to want to get rid of the little guy because they want all of the business and market share. And I think there's some people in the pharmaceutical and biotech that in their mind, they don't accept that there's alternatives outside. But I think the majority do accept for their families and for their lives that it's important to take certain things that can prevent you from getting sick or can actually help you once you're sick, that are not a pharmaceutical product that costs $300,000 to $400,000 a year per patient, right?
Yeah. Well, the one thing I've always noticed, this is, if you have a sick child, you watch any driven mother, she will exhaust all the options. And then all of a sudden, this is where these, not over the counter, but these simple remedies, things have been around for a while. And then they'll find out the separation between Eastern versus Western medicines, et cetera. And this is where this conversation, and then all of a sudden it's, why haven't we known about this? Why has this been readily available, but we're not talking about it more, et cetera? Which is really, frankly, the reason for this podcast, frankly, on all avenues, is not just, well, had we known there was another option to exhaust and explore, would you take it? What would you do with that information? How would you move forward? And that's exactly what we're trying to answer, which is, thank you for saying that.
Well, I'm glad you brought me back to that point because I'm a mother of 4. And I had cancer when I had my first son, and I've lost a child to cancer. I had another child that's now 16 that had cancer, and I've had Lyme's disease. And I want to say this, that's where my burning desire for science came. You know, my mother was a classical pianist and cellist. I was an artist, but then when my healthcare impacted me and impacted my children, and that changed my life. So this is a great point. As a mother, you can go to all the parties or all the social events you want. You know, we all do that. It's part of life. But when it comes to your child, you don't care if you're popular. Like, it goes out the window. When your child is sick or you lose a child, you don't care if people like you, and you don't care if people agree with what you say, especially, I believe, very intelligent. And I think all mothers are love their children. Most mothers love their children and would do anything. But your very intelligent mothers, they're not willing anymore when their child gets sick to just listen to take this drug, right? They want to look at everything. And I can tell you from traveling to those countries, if you said to me, what was the most important thing about traveling to all those countries, Christina? I would say one thing every time. Being able to see all the different options of healthcare and wellness that we don't use here, and that is mainstream and there, or different there, and we just have none of it here. What stands out the most? If you out of all the different countries that you've traveled to, and there's a lot, and not to go through the list of those, but what stands out the most in comparison to the U.S.? I know this is going to sound probably odd, but probably the number 1, I would say, is Ukraine. Number 2 is Lebanon, as far as healthcare, and number 3, probably Nigeria. Different things that they use that there's no money, there's no medicine, there's not, in a lot of those areas, Bosnia, Serbia, there's no, you can't get a $800,000 a year. Well, it's $500,000 a year now. One of the companies I work for, the molecule, you can't get that molecule there. The United States isn't bringing that molecule into those poor countries. They can't afford to pay for it.
Isn't the difference between Nigeria, and I may need to fact check myself on this, but the difference between Nigeria and the United States for a cardiac surgery or that type of procedure is, in the U.S., it's like $100,000 to $150,000 for that procedure here. But over there, it's less than $1,000, something close to that, right?
Yes. So I'll give you an example. I got sick in Ukraine. I got really sick. I thought I was going to die. Could not even. I kept fainting. I mean, it was horrible. And ended up in the hospital there. And in the hospital there, so you don't, your certifications, your medical schools, there's really no governing body to check if you actually went to medical school, or if you actually had that. So if you have that on your wall, but I ended up going to different places and then ended up in an American hospital, but the guy was Ukrainian, and they gave me completely different treatments like there were not antibiotics. It was basically, they gave me vitamin C and the vitamin Bs, and they gave me trace minerals. and they gave me a bunch of stuff that had to do with prebiotics and probiotics. I think they used HOCl, which is a natural, occurring ingredient. They used, well, you have to make it, but it's not, it's very cheap to make. Mm-hmm. They use a lot of zeolites and things like that in their IVs. I mean, they do things that we would never accept here. I think that it was very interesting to be sick and to be treated in a way that cost, I think it was $150, to be treated for a day, to be at the hospital. Wow. And with just natural occurring things, really. And it's just, and I have a lot of situations, like I was exposed to things in China and Vietnam that are like different types of mushrooms, different types of organs from animals. I know this sounds odd, or organs from people that work for them over there. And we just don't, different types of algae in Korea, that we just don't even talk about there. But there, when you go to a doctor, it's there. And you go to a pharmacy there and you see jars of natural vegetables and plants and herbs. And I know this sounds really odd again, different parts of animals, different things in these jars suspended that they're using to cure diseases and illnesses and to impact wellness. And so it's amazing. Another place I'm going to tell you is Mexico, the Middle East. They have a lot of stuff that they do with stem cells. Their advancements over ours right now are very different. I'm sure we would say that they don't work, but here's what I'm going to tell you, because I've been to those hospitals. They do work. So you get cancer here, you're treated in a certain way.
Sure.
You get cancer over there, you're treated with a lot of natural supplements and a lot of natural things.
When we were having our pre-discussion, what really fascinated me was this combination of what you've done, what you're doing. So you're in the biopharma space and you went to school, very highly educated. You have a PhD, okay, a lot of dissertations underneath you as well. You also have developed those patents at the same time. Now, you already gave us a quick little example of optimizing vitamin C and making sure that it's used well within the body, okay?
Right.
How does all this start translating into heavy metals? Because this is an underlying topic that I understand, that you understand as well, that's killing a lot of people. And we are slowly being poisoned through our food sourcing and the type of nutrition that we're being fed that is quote unquote good, that's really not.
Yeah.
So if you can talk about that a little bit, that'd be great, because in my last conversation with Jeffrey, well, this week's podcast it released with Jeffrey Wu, which is number 58, we talked about the mom, or just maybe let's not categorize it as the mom, but the parent who is running their kid to a practice or to and from school, and they're running for a fast food because they need some nutrition, or they think that's okay, or French fries and things like that. We had Ben Azadi on the show and talked about vegetable oils and what's the slow toxins that are killing us and causes these illnesses and disease that are just now burdening our bodies long term, and the need to detox. You're really big on detox. Mm-hmm. Go. This is where we're going to help the people right here.
Yeah, I think this is going to answer a couple of the questions you've already asked me too, because that's where I think I started getting criticism. I left the biotech environment. I ran a pharmaceutical company, not pharmaceutical, a research company, contract research organization, an interoperative monitoring company as a CEO. We were in 33 hospitals. The interoperative monitoring company for spine did really well. The research company, which
we'll talk about spine too, by the way.
It was a very, I want to say this, I did not really enjoy being a CEO because I loved doing the companies, but as female CEOs, and that could be another discussion.
Well, we mentioned that as the first question, that a lot of female
attacked.
CEOs, they don't like confrontation, and they look to sue you or have a hostile takeover at some point. Not that I digress there, but I mean, there's a lot of controversy for a lot of women who are in leadership, and there is a separate topic for that. But this is where I want to highlight you again, is you were in those roles and you've prevailed.
Yeah, and I want, I don't know if I use the word prevail.
Well, you're still around. You're still doing your thing. I'd call that prevailing.
Thank you. Well, I was going to say this because I think it goes back to mothers again. And I, if I could, I would spend every second talking to mothers and fathers because we're raising the next generation. And it's really important that we do all this right, especially from a healthcare and wellness perspective. But yeah, as a female CEO, I think the numbers are 70% of female CEOs will only last a year to 2 years because of law, usually because publicly they will try to embarrass women and hurt their reputation because they want to discredit and or they will fire them, you know, or the harassment and the different things. And I don't look at myself as a feminist. I look at myself as a person that stands for doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. I always say this, I love men and women. I have 3 boys and a girl, and I hope that I raise them the right way so that they can carry on what I believe is the right way to impact society by doing the right thing. And I'm not a complete idealist. I understand the reality of business. I understand the bottom line of looking at numbers. But I think, you know, for me, there's not a point in doing business unless I'm going to help people. So I ran spine and total joint registries and as a CEO, and the data that I got was not accepted well by a lot of the people. We had investors in the company. And if your data shows that 40 to 70% of the surgeries aren't being done correctly, or that maybe didn't need to be done at that time point, then that impacts the spine and total joint business. And I wasn't probably that popular for a while, but I think that spine surgeries and knee surgeries and hip surgeries are definitely needed. It's like saying, do you need to do a heart surgery that is minimally invasive? Absolutely. But I also think that you need to do it the right way. And I think you need to make sure that the doctors and the scientists and the salespeople are held to accountability so that it's really easy to justify when you need to make a $2 million house payment or buy a new car every year for your wife or husband, you know, that you need to have a surgery that maybe you didn't need to put on the books, or maybe you didn't. So I really wanted, and my ex-husband was in the spine business, so which meant I benefited, you know, from these surgeries. However, or we did financially. However, for me, I wasn't against the surgeries. It needed to be, you need to do spine surgeries, total joint, all those surgeries when you need to have those. And there's a million fantastic doctors out there that will not perform a surgery unless it's really needed. Sure. Unfortunately, there's some surgeons, and you and I both know this, there are some people, just like any profession, that will do a surgery or do something when maybe it wasn't needed at that time. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I took a stand. I made a statement. I was actually in Washington, D.C. on a panel, and I made the statement that and I actually was speaking about amazing surgeons from Johns Hopkins because I was doing some stuff with Johns Hopkins, and we were in all the hospitals, and I said that those doctors were amazing, but there are some doctors that were doing surgery that weren't needed. And I just discussed the statistics from the registry and the data that we were seeing. And that not only was not accepted well, that I said that I wouldn't have done a spine surgery like that on my dog, let alone a person when it's not needed. Sure. It was not accepted by the investors and people that benefited the more spine surgeries that occurred. And I just want to make sure I make this point. Again, 80% of your doctors, 80% of your salespeople, 80% of the people in the hospital are doing things the right way. The problem is that 20%, and I don't know the exact number, but that small percent that aren't can cause considerable harm to patients and people. Yeah. And I think one of the biggest messages, you know, to mothers and to people is my passion. My goal is I feel like I was given the ability to be in these situations and in these countries and with these major companies when back then, I'm going to just tell you, I didn't know that NuVasive was such a great company when I consulted with them. I didn't know that Biogen IDEC is going to be one of the top biotech companies in the world. I didn't know that, but I think I was placed in that position so I could take that knowledge, not say those companies are bad because they're not bad, but also be able to impart, okay, here's the good things here, and here's the good things outside of here, and let's bring all of this together in a wellness healthcare platform to help the most people possible. Why shouldn't a mother that lives in Baltimore, Maryland, not know what's happening in China to save a child that could save her child?
So,
which is where I feel like women have really, these strong, amazing women they're very intelligent. They may not have gone to school for 20 years like I have, but that doesn't mean they're any less intelligent than me. It
Sure.
means that they have thrown their lives into finding the solution for their children because they love them that much, and they're as intelligent as me. They're just in a different position. So I feel like my platform needs to be to help all those people and support that they're absolutely right. They're not crazy. You know, there's a lot of things you can do that are not just a prescription or a surgery.
Right.
There's a lot of different things you can do. And you know, I'm not saying that against doctors. Doctors are amazing.
If you had to break down, so you're talking about bringing everything together holistically. So if you had to break apart and say, okay, you need a spine surgery, knee, hip surgery replacement, what have you, something in that category, how do you make sure and validate that it's absolutely necessary outside of someone just putting you on the books because they need another paycheck?
Well, first of all, your doctors that are really good doctors, and this kind of goes, and I want to say this because I want us to come back to here later. First of all, if you're going to do surgeries and do things like that, you should be detoxing through that process before and after, and then supplementing so that when you have those surgeries, a heart surgery, spine surgery, that you're making sure that your body is able to heal. Because one of your issues with spine and total joint surgeries is that if you're overweight, if you have diabetes, if you've got extenuating circumstances that will prevent you from healing afterwards, or from a fusion to fuse, for example, then it won't be successful.
Right.
But if you have a doctor that you go to, and I'll give an example. I had a son that was playing football and got hurt, and he had to have a ACL meniscus surgery. His surgeon's one of the best in the countries, and he gave him a list of supplements that he should take during and after that could help. And he said, you can go to our website, but you don't have to go to our website. You can go to the store and get it. But these are things that will help you during your surgery, which I was extremely happy about.
Mm-hmm.
And then he also told my son, he played rugby at college at the time, and he told him he probably would never go back and play rugby. He actually went back the next year and ended up being first or second team on the SEC MVP, everything after that surgery. But I think it's because he detoxed and he healed, and he had a surgeon that was looking at the holistic person. And I would say if you go to a doctor that doesn't want you to have a second opinion, that won't listen, like, for example, if you're a mother or father and say, well, here's some of the supplements and things that I think will help, and they say, oh, you shouldn't take any of that, then I feel like that's not the right doctor for most people. I'm not saying they're not a good doctor. I'm saying that
I'll say they're not a good doctor.
Here's what I'm going to say. It's your body.
Right.
You get to choose. And I tell people this all the time. All these people spend millions of dollars on houses, or hundreds of thousands of dollars on houses and vacation homes.
Yep.
And cars. And you reach a point in your life where you realize, okay, is that really making me happy? What is that doing? But here's what I say all the time. This house, this is like, I travel over 200 days a year. This went with me whatever hotel I was in, whatever country I was in. This is where I am. And so you won't let someone break in your house unless you don't let people come in your house unless you know they're the right person to come in, because you've got kids and everything else in that home, and you want to make sure that they're a good person coming in. So why do people go to a doctor that they let them tell them what to do, but they don't know for sure, and they're impacting this only house they're ever going to have, and they feel guilty saying, no, I don't agree with you. Or no, I'm not. What about this? And oh, you don't need to worry about that. Well, it's their body. So I don't understand. I really want to empower people to not feel guilty, to not feel bad, to make that choice. Just because someone, look, I'm going to speak about me. I went to school 4 years undergrad, 3 for my master's in science, 5 for my doctorate in counseling and psychology, then a couple of years for strategic science, then nanobiotechnology. Now I'm doing my degree in nutrition. I mean, so what? So what? Listen, if you ask me a question and I say, well, this is what I think, and then Scott, you say to me, well, this is what I learned, Christina. If I don't listen to you, just because I went to school, it means nothing. I studied from a book and learned as much as I can. You can learn.
That was man-made and man-interpreted, by the way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's handed down from pharmaceutical and medical device and what we've taught, and a lot of it isn't even accurate.
Right.
Like they used to tell us that black hole theory and string theory wasn't real, and now we know for a fact it is.
Yeah.
So
Well, my wife, Michelle, we had my firstborn was sick when she was born due to a traumatic hit and run car accident. And there was just a list of complications that started presenting themselves as we went through. So my wife wrote nothing less than a short dissertation thesis, if you will, on a 3-inch binder. And she handed that, and we actually had him on the show, Dr. Kenneth Bach. He's probably the best, in my opinion, because obviously we went to him, but he's definitely recorded as the top 3 integrative functional doctors in the world.
What's his name?
Dr. Kenneth Bach. He's up in Rhinebeck, New York. And just to really...
I've heard of him. Yeah.
Just to give him some accolades here, he looked at my wife and says, "You're absolutely right." And he didn't say that he knew everything. And when I say he's seen at this point tens of thousands of people and patients across the world who have traveled to this little town in up New York State, he said, "Yeah, you're absolutely right." And he took the book and he went through it all. And together with him, we figured out exactly what it was. There was an underlying condition that suppresses the immune system that a lot of people did not recognize. It's more known now, just like leaky gut is and everything else as it slowly came out.
But back then it wasn't.
But back then it wasn't. So,
well, not only that, lots of doctors would think that's crazy.
Our primary care pediatric doctor for my daughter was like, "No, what is that stuff?" And so once we had all that validated and we brought it all back, that's where it all came in. So I'm going to full circle this real quick because we just validated something that people need to know. We need to know how to detox the body. Mm-hmm. And we detoxed our daughter and it worked. We detoxed our daughter to the point where one of the doctors who then we saw down here came back and says, he's told us to my wife, Michelle, says, "You saved your daughter's life. Mm-hmm. You saved her from a life of hardship." And I was like, wow. And I just took a breath and I was like, oh my gosh. I was just incredibly thankful. You're doing the same thing. You know a lot about blood detoxing and optimization of cells. When you combine what you're studying with nutrition, psychology, and nanotech and all your experiences, the whole package right in front of us and everyone that's listening to this. So let's dive into this and let's get a little bit more specific now on it. So what should people be doing? What should they be avoiding? What should they be taking in place of, et cetera?
So I've similar to your wife, I was the same way when my son had a tumor on his chest wall. He was 2 years old. He's now 16 and I think almost 6'4". But
I'm 6'4".
Beautiful kid, and they basically put him under. It still makes me cry when I think about it. But they put him under at Vanderbilt and actually said that the tumor had spread throughout his body, mm-hmm. and that he was going to die. And I fainted and got sick, and then I fortunately know how to look at scans. I know how to read them, and part of that is because of my background with spine and total joint and consulting in some areas there. But I saw that that is not what it looked like, and also my background with cancer, working at these biotech companies. I asked to speak to a supervisor, and they had a supervisor come in, and it was wrong. They read the report wrong. It was a tumor. It was localized. It had not spread yet into the lymph nodes. But I always still wonder, if I hadn't had the background that I had, what would have happened? Do you know what I mean? Because they were immediately going to take him upstairs. And anyway, I chose alternative ways to treat my son Kreider. And I had done a lot of research when I had a prolactinoma and cerulomyelia because of having cancer. And they were going to do a surgery on the prolactinoma and the pituitary tumor. And I started drinking spirulina. I started detoxing. I read all the World Health Organization reports. I really threw myself into alternative medicine. I did not want to have surgery on my brain because for my personality and what I do, to think that I wasn't going to be able to think, if possibly from the surgery, was just not an option for me.
Sure.
And so I did alternative. When they went in actually to do the scan for the colectinoma, they couldn't find it.
So you're telling me you took a mineral that eliminated completely the tumor that was in your brain.
Well, I did a number of things. So what I did was, first of all, and you probably know this, when you have a tumor or a cancer cell growth, ketogenic or almost mild hypoglycemia, those kinds of things can slow the growth of a tumor. You don't want to feed the tumor cell, right? And a lot of doctors will disagree on that. I have tons of articles that support that, not just from when I was sick, but also from what I've done as a researcher. And when I present that in a class at Harvard or Cornell or wherever I am, those doctors, just so you know, don't argue with me about that. It's just mainstream when someone's trying to prove a drug, right? That there's an argument that they don't want to admit that. But I detox. So back when I was in my 20s was when I first started understanding about different types of zeolites or different types of orthosilic acids, different types of clays and bentonite, and different types of salts that help things get out of your body, different types of oils that help. And during that time, researching like cedar oil and GABA that can help you because when you're dealing with thinking you potentially might die or lose your ability to think, it's a little overwhelming and depressing, right? And no one, I don't care who you are. And my personality is I always want to switch it to the positive, but it's overwhelming. So I researched all of those things. And what I kept going back to was I kept reading, if you don't really detox the body and try to really clean that body so your body is communicating right between cells, then you can't really impact and totally get rid of cancer. Because, cancer hides. It's like boxing. I've been boxing with my kids lately, and, you're hiding, and that's what cancer does in your body. But here's the truth. If you can get your body and your cells that are healthy to be strong and to work right, they can fight the cancer. They can cause the cancer cells to die, apoptosis. They can cause the cells to slowly die that are not looking like, them because they're sick. It's called necrosis. Because what we don't understand is cells talk like a walkie-talkie, right? They're communicating. So when you've got a cancer cell, it communicates with a healthy cell and says, why do you, kind of like you're bullying the cell, why do you look like that? You need to look like me. And another thing we realize now that I learned while I was at Harvard is my cells can communicate with your cells.
Yes.
We didn't used to know that. Like we're in a room and now we understand that I can actually, my cells are impacting yours. So you better be careful who you're hanging around.
I love how we structured this and how we put this together without even knowing these things are going to pop up naturally just in this conversation, is that how the exchange of energy. I had a brief discussion with my mother yesterday, and we were talking about, she's up in Boston, and we're talking about how the Globe and now the Herald, which are very, very left, how they now are supporting Donald Trump. And, she didn't tell me who she voted for, but, well, actually she did. I just don't want to put it on the cast.
She may not want you to.
Yeah, that's her privacy and her right. So, yeah. But we were going through, and I quickly moved over to energy exchange because we were talking about some things, and she's like, wait a minute, you're telling me that through energy, you can do something to me and vice versa? I said, yes. It's been proven. It's there. It's called under quantum physics or quantum mechanics, however you want to decide what you want to name it. And again, I have a friend who says, shit happens that we give it a name. And we do, and that's an example of that. But I said, yeah. So exactly what you're talking about, to get back into the point here, as someone's detoxing and exchanging energy, you specifically, and I mentioned specifically as we were beginning this podcast, was the exchange of energy. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So let's jump into that a little bit in combination with the detox, because again, what I'm right now trying to deploy out here for everyone is this week, when we released everything about ketosis and detoxing through food, proper food and nutrition and food sourcing, now we're going to the next level on what other supplements you can do. And the examples you already mentioned, if you have a spine surgery, a knee surgery, hip surgery, things that traumatically happen, what you can do pre and post to accelerate or maximize those recovery periods, or how to prevent those all together for the same thing.
Right.
And this is all falling into line.
Oh, yeah. Well, so when you're sick, your body, your cells are dirty. They're sick, right? And so again, we talked about they're communicating and the illness will grow. You've got to get the bad communication and bad things out. You've got to take the trash out. You would never think of not taking the trash out of your home.
Right.
You know, if you said to your wife, I've decided I'm not taking trash out for a year, there may be an argument that happens.
That is a great way of putting that. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Or if any of you guys have kids, if your child says, I'm not cleaning my room for a year, that's not going to cut it. But yet people, because we have not had social media telling us, you know, about this, because the World Health Organization knows we're toxic. They know there's heavy metal. They know that our world, and I just want everyone to sit here and think, we know the earth has been here for a long time.
Yeah.
Your earth, your heavy metals, your pollution, your nuclear waste, your Agent Orange, your wars, it doesn't just leave. It's here. It's in the air. It's in the water.
Right.
It's in the earth. It's everywhere.
Just so everyone knows too. So everyone always talks about like the ocean, for example. Let me just put it in perspective real quick. And this isn't, I'm not going down the segue of, you know, clean the earth and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's a lot to do, but the ocean is the cleaning mechanism, the scrubber, if you will, for the land and everything else that's in it. And guess what? We're fucking that up too.
Oh, yeah. But you know what we're forgetting is we all share basically the same DNA.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if people realize that. Like a leaf on a tree, there's part of that leaf that we also have in us. And I think that's something that scientists don't talk about, definitely don't learn it in school, you know, when you're in high school.
Yeah.
But we all share this same DNA, and we're all part of each other. And that was like a movement where people thought it was kind of a cool thing to say, but it's actually the truth. So our environment is toxic and we're toxic. The mother, when your goal is to protect your child, and we all as a mother, when we get pregnant, we want to protect that child in our stomach, and we're made to protect that child. You know, you've got all of the amniotic fluid around the child, but what we also do is we're dumping the toxins into our stomach and into the child as well. So you pass those heavy metals and those toxins onto the baby. And that's why, you know, everyone talks about vaccines, and that's a different discussion as well. But it's not just the vaccines that cause autism. It's not just the vaccines that cause ADHD and OCD and depression. It's the fact that we have all these heavy metals that are in our body that the mothers, because our earth has grown, my mother passed toxins down to me. Her mother passed them to her. Now I've passed them to my children, and each generation has more cognitive health issues, more fertility issues, more cancer. So why in a world where we have all these brilliant scientists that are coming up with all these different things to help cancer, is cancer dramatically increasing? Why with all these brilliant scientists do we have the fact that we have all these viruses that are everywhere? Why? Because our earth is toxic and we are too. The only way this is my opinion, you can put Band-Aids on it. You can paint your house, for example, because we talk about this. Yep. But if the inside of that house has the trash that hasn't been taken out for a year, no one wants to come in your house to visit you. No one, except for maybe bad people that like to leave trash everywhere too, or people that are dirty, right? So you get to decide, do you want the inside of your house, inside of your body to be clean, or do you just want to leave trash in it for a year? Right. And people ask me, how often do you detox and what do you do? And my comment is, it's an everyday thing, because I don't leave my dishes in the sink and never clean up, or just throw trash on the ground and never put it in the trash and then take it out. I do that to my house every day. So why would I not do that to my body? And there's different ways to do it. And there's different IVs that people take, cryotherapy. There's all kinds of things that can help. But for me, I definitely use orthosilic acids. I've done a lot of patents around it. I would say the focus over the last 6, 7, 8 years, but going back to 20 years of my research and things that I've looked at, the focus has been detoxification and supplements, because when I started understanding that I could help detox the toxins out of my body so my cells could communicate better, and then if I could supplement with the right healthy things, that I could get rid of different things in my body that were negative, then for me, that was my mission. And because for me, I had to do that for my children, because when I realized, okay, I grew up in a farm where there was all kinds of pesticide, cancer runs in my family. Now I pass this on to my children and they're going to be worse. That was a major thing for me. And you can't always prevent your kids from eating junk food, even though we all want to, but
Sure.
you can't always do it. But what you can do is give them different things, different drops and different things that help them detox their body so that they grow to be healthy, and so that they don't have as many cognitive functioning issues and don't have as many fertility issues or the chances for cancer. And so that's been a mission for me. And I think that's where I probably, going full circle back to the beginning, had the most criticism, because even though the World Health Organization, even though all your governments recognize that and actually put it in all of their reports, 99% of the research is showing that. And it's in the reports for all these government healthcare. But guess what? Why wouldn't we all know about that? I'm asking you, why? And then why are we criticized for talking about it?
Well, we don't know about it, and we're being criticized because, one, they want us to be sick, because they're the payment system that's aligned with the CPT code. That's a vicious cycle over and over and over. I had a conversation yesterday, a random conversation, wasn't even planned, with an attorney, because we're looking for a really well-spoken, when I say well-spoken, not just linguistically, but someone who understands what's really going on in the healthcare medical litigation space. And I've had some questions like, hey, how do we solve this problem if you get a frivolous bill, et cetera, et cetera? So in a random conversation with an attorney, I said, hey, by the way, would you happen to know someone who's in this space who is really, really well spoken to this topic point? And we were going back and forth, and I introduced you to him, and he's like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to listen to the episode. I let him know about Jeffrey Wu, who was on this week, about what we're doing on this upcoming week with new patient towers being built. And he was blown away. He's like, no one's done that before. And I said, yes, but I said, stop, let's go back for a second. We started talking about the payment system. He's like, you're absolutely right. It's all designed around that vicious cycle of bringing people back, that wire string to their purse that's constantly pulling money out on it's, everyone thinks that the monthly payment scheme or credit cards and Amazon is new. It's not. It's existed for a long time through our healthcare system. And it's about time that we woke up, we acknowledge all of this, and we do something about it, because we don't need, look, this podcast and other podcasts alike that are out there with friends that I'm friends with could probably single-handedly destroy practices outside of ones that you are running. So the joint replacement program, everything else, because that's how they get paid. That's how they make money. That's how the hospitals make money. I'm telling everyone right now, it's not needed. If you eat correctly, detox properly, guess what? Your body responds, and you don't have these long-term issues, and then your head clears up and you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't need that. What we really need, and this is going off a little bit of a tangent, but what we really need is catastrophic insurance. That's it. In the right information.
That's true.
In the right information. So again, when I research folks and people, the reason why you and I are doing this is because you're one of the right people who understands all of this holistically.
Thanks. I think that, you never know why things happen in life. I think probably that's why I had Lyme disease and cancer, and why I had children with cancer, was to make me use my mind and what gifts I've been given to help people. Because otherwise, before that, just so you know, I really didn't have very many bad things happen to me. And it humbled me to the point that I just knew I had to do the right thing, because if you don't know if you're going to be alive and to be able to live to raise your children, then when you get that opportunity, you do the right thing. Right. And I don't know how to get the criticism or the attacks to stop against people that are trying to do the right thing. If I could go back to my 20s and talk to myself, I'd probably say,
well, you said it in the precast the best. And this is, there is no other way of really saying it besides just saying it. These big pharma companies, 80% of them, right? And let's say the people, or 80% of the people inside of them want to do the right thing. It's the corrupt side of it that's making it really hard. And they could spend, and this is going to shock a lot of people, but $200 million on putting a negative connotation over someone, or a question mark over someone's head in the press, or just completely derailing them through media, is nothing to them. It's a drop in the bucket when they're going to make $2 to $3 billion of profitable margin thereafter. It doesn't matter to them. They're like, whatever, we're going to spend $200 million on $3 billion, whatever, do it all day.
They don't care at all, because if they know that they're going to make that money, they've got to shut up the person that's saying, or keep the person quiet. They don't care what they spend. They don't care how many attorneys. And so how does an independent person, scientist, MD, PhD, business person, how do they fight that? I think the answer is, and there's no excuse for people not sticking together that are trying to do the right thing. Right. It's like good cells fighting bad cells. You've got to find the right group to work with and commit. And you've really got to be careful, because we talk about this energy exchange. Yep. You have to be with the right people. If the people aren't able to do the right thing, then they are not probably on the right team as far as what you and I are discussing. But I also think that in the nutraceutical supplement world, I want to say this, it's growing so fast that you also have to make sure in that world, because there's so much money, you've got companies making $10 billion a year. Some of these companies, you have to make sure you're taking the right product. They didn't change the ingredients on the product, and that you really are getting what you're trying to get. Because
it's funny you bringing this up. We just did a video release, and the video release was the science behind biohacking, which is exactly what, it's just a different way of saying it. So nutraceutical is biohacking.
It's biohacking.
Yeah,
it is. And it sounds, especially if you're using anything that is impacting and communicating with that cell or that brain barrier, right? You're biohacking. Yep. And so you've got to make sure, like, I know there's all these different companies and groups that say that they're doing, nanotechnology, or that they're doing different things. And I'm not saying that they're not, because like I said, there could be a mother that doesn't have the education that I have, that's extremely intelligent, that knows more than the CEO of a pharmaceutical or nutraceutical company.
Without doubt. No question.
Without a doubt.
Well, the reason why she knows is because she has, I doubt we have to it keeps coming up, so we got to talk about it finally, but the energy exchange is that energy exchange between that mom and that child is there. The energy exchange between the CEO and that purchaser or consumer of that product is not there. No. And it's the medium in between is the quote unquote testing protocol. So let's get into the energy exchange real quick, because we've mentioned it a few times. So what does that mean? Give us the real quick baseline of energy exchange, and then how does that translate into healthcare, detoxing, et cetera?
Okay. And I do want to tell you something that I thought was very interesting, because I learned this at Harvard, and I didn't know this before I learned it. You and I talked about it briefly the other day. So, sometimes people would think that they could read someone's mind, or something happened that they were like, wait a minute, this is deja vu, right? Mm-hmm. How did I know this? And now we realize as scientists that you can actually put people under machines that can read what that person's feeling and thinking down to the age of 2. And not just like, did that person have a cat, but what did they think about that cat? Was it black or white? Did they like that cat? Did the cat scare them? They can actually pull that now out of the brain, and you can actually look at that in a scan. It's very, very expensive, of course, to be able to do that, but you're able to really read what's going on in the body. And now there's devices that they're working on where if you walk in a room, if there's people in the room, you know what they're thinking and you can hear it. And I said this, that they're thinking in the next 10 to 20 years when you go in for an interview, that there's some companies that they don't need to interview you because they're going to know everything that they need to know in their opinion from what they're reading. But the problem is they can't like negate. They're trying to figure out if you wear this, how do we isolate it so you only hear certain things or only hear certain people and not everything in the room, stuff like that. So through all of the scientific studies, they've been able to find that there's energy that these cells within, like my body, if someone else is in the room, they can actually communicate. So it's one of the reasons if people are highly evolved, that they feel connections to people automatically. Yeah. It's either that their cells are synergetically on the same energy level and they're communicating, or they have some prior, thing that's happened in their life that they're connecting to that person in the room, and there's this energy exchange.
Let me add to this that will complement what you just said is some will accept this, some will not. But I'm going to tell everyone anyways. So if people look into neuro-linguistic programming, okay, I'm telling you, you will find a way of how to access or get into the void, and you can learn to do energy exchange and feel and see what's going on with someone else beside you. It's real. It happens. I can do it. I do it all the time now. I can do it. And I'm learning more and more as I become more available to access to that on the energy exchange. And it sounds crazy. It's not talked about. It's not taught. It's just, and they don't want us to know how to do that, because the reason why is because now, if something's going on and you know how to make an adjustment neurologically to the body, because everything is just think of it this way. If you are the anatomical man in position and your arms are out and that's just an electrical grid. That's all it is.
Yeah, that's it.
So if you know how to access the electrical grid to stimulate or understimulate, now you're not manipulating, but you're kind of redirecting the energy flow. And that's all that is. And that's a really important point to understand. So what they're doing at Harvard with the MRI is they've designed an algorithm that can do the same thing.
That's it.
It's not new. They just took the technology and say, how can we do this faster and more efficiently? Boom. Yeah. Right.
And they know it's not new. I mean, it's not new. It's some people, but I will say this, you have to either work at it, or some people naturally just, and I'm sure you know this, some people have that gift and they don't understand the gift, but they just know things. And obviously those people have a heads up or have an ability that seems like, people might say they're psychic, right? But no, it's the energy that they're able to understand. And I actually was working with the Proctors and the Gambles, and, the Gambles, I was working with Foster and Kimberly Gamble, and they were saying I was a channeler. And I said, I don't know what that is. And they said, you just know things. And I said, I think I know things because energetically I can feel and understand and be able to communicate, because this goes back to nanotechnology. Yep. If you really look at this has gone on for years, and people just don't understand that it scares people, right? So when people get scared, they just choose to go back to following what they're used to. Well, and so you just have to be,
Well, here's something that most people don't know. Fluoride is a neurotoxin. That neurotoxin turns off the pineal gland. The pineal gland is what people would consider highly as the third eye, the one that can get into the void or the axis and realize what's going on through energy exchange. So the water that we're given publicly, that, by the way, we're paying for, with heavy neurotoxins that are designed to say, oh, well, you need this for dental or overchlorination, etc. Look, go get some purified water, stop drinking it for a little while, and all of a sudden you can start seeing things and thinking a little bit clearer. It's amazing. Just give it a try.
Amazing. And that's right? Funny. That's one of the patents I wrote. I wrote patents around orthosilicic acid and because orthosilicic acid, there's basically 5 major groups and they're broken down. So like for a bentonite and zeolite, we know those are they can detox different things like the skin or our bodies. Arsenic, though, is also an orthosilicic acid. Fluoride is an orthosilicic acid. There's different things that are. So I wrote patents around using the orthosilicic acids that are good to basically detox the ones that are bad for our body, because so many of us have those. And, when you look at Detroit, Michigan, when they were looking at getting the lead out, I don't know if you know this, they were looking at solutions like adding more fluoride. And I'm like, great, you're going to have all this iron that is not, this mercury and all this stuff that's in the water that is in toxic levels. And then you're just going to add all this fluoride and you're just going to make people worse. You're basically going to cause people to mentally, cognitively, emotionally break down so they're not able to function. And it's horrific in my opinion. So I wrote patents around the water, air, land, as well as people, and detoxifying it using the different type of orthosilicic acid that works, that will help with that. So I think that's really important. And I will tell you this, if you're taking fluoride and you're not stopping it, like you're saying, which is what they should do, and just drinking alkaline water, or drinking different types of water that's really good for them, then they need to definitely put detox drops in that water or take them every day, because it's just so bad for people. And you're right. When your adrenal gland isn't working, and I've got to tell you from traveling and different things I've gone through, I can tell when it's not working, for me.
Yeah.
And
when the easiest way for most people to identify this is that when you're feeling moments of high anxiety and stress, when nothing's really going on, guess what? Something's up.
Oh, yeah.
It's that is your symptom, quote unquote symptom, that you should recognize, and then you need to, and it happens, especially if you have young children or just children in the house still who are dependent on you. It happens a lot. So again, that's a telltale sign. You mentioned before, when we talked about detoxifying and et cetera, about Alzheimer's and dementia, that was really interesting to me, because we're being fed that it's an old age disease. Sometimes it's unavoidable, it's hereditary, when now we know that it's not. You know that it's not. You know that it's a heavy metal condition and with other underlying toxic conditions that are present in the body. So in combination, it's creating a disastrous mess or chaos, which is basically turning the brain into mush.
Yeah.
You talked about turmeric and some other minerals that help with cleaning out the body and significantly reducing the effects, et cetera. If you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I was in school and we were doing a project in nanotechnology where we were talking about basically the development of different pharmaceutical nutraceuticals in host cells, which you do vaccines in host cells. So you have either mammalian host cells, yeast host cells, or usually like E. coli host cells that you basically make products in, like pharmaceutical or biotech or vaccine, so that it will deliver better, because you use that to incubate and program, which the latest vaccines for COVID are mostly in caterpillar or insect vaccine, which are host cells, which before now was not accepted because of the side effects later. But I think that's where they're making those right now. I was trying to come up with an ability, because I have so many people in my family that have had Alzheimer's and dementia, and brilliant, like my grandmother, masters in statistics from Vanderbilt, one of the most brilliant women I've ever met. And when she got it, it just completely, she would never want to live that way, not being able to think or communicate. So I didn't realize this, because I actually was at Pfizer when we had Aricept, which is for Alzheimer's, which only has like a 40, I think something% efficacy rate, which means, your placebo is usually 40%. Now, it depended on the study that you saw with Aricept, but the bottom line is there's really not a cure, right? Or a solution out there. So this is something, as a scientist, is a mission of mine. And when we started having discussions about, now they're realizing that the ApoE gene is not the direct cause for Alzheimer's, and that actually the Alzheimer's and dementia are not a natural part of aging, that yes, there is a trigger to a gene that can occur, but it's because we're toxic and there's different things that are happening within our body. So if we can stop the progression of those things in our body, dementia and Alzheimer's may never occur in those people. Wow. So if you go to the Alzheimer's Association, they've even listed things like turmeric, curcumin, and there's other products like resveratrol. There's other products like black cumin seed, trying to think of the different, I like olive leaf extract. I like oregano. We talked about that
We
briefly.
talked about oregano before. Yeah. That oregano oil,
It's amazing.
when I hear, I know it's amazing, but when I think of it, oh my God, I'm like, I can remember the burning.
It's just killing the bacteria.
Yeah,
and
it really is.
Parasite, but it's also triggering the system to work more effectively and for the brain and the stomach to communicate more effectively. So I actually have a product that should be out by next year.
Which by the way, just to throw this in there, which is why on the daily it's so important to have the proper nutrition and to have a balanced diet, because versus going through not the extreme of having extracted, hardly pressed oregano oil, but if you have an oregano in your salads and meals in small doses, I mentioned earlier, but there is the slow toxic drip of toxins going in your body every day through a bad food sourcing cycle. Yeah. Well, this is the reverse of that. This is a slow toxic drip of all the good stuff that provides and keeps those connections where they need to be.
Exactly. And I think that's something that we don't realize. I think people think when they eat, they're putting nutrients in their body. Yeah. And, Cornell is I think it's number one as far as the nutritional program. And so those professors are extremely, talented and well-researched and know all the latest data. I did not realize completely. And you think that as a scientist, I know everything. Well, absolutely. I'm just going to tell you I don't. So I'm always learning stuff. And I didn't really realize as much science and as much education. I didn't realize that when you put food in your body, that, the reason you're chewing is to really break down, the saliva breaks down the bacteria, the viruses, the parasites, so they don't go into the system. So that's one of the reasons, my mom always said chew 20 times, but that's really one of the reasons is because that saliva is in the mouth to break that down. And your cold press, for example, like your cold pressed oregano oil or cold pressed turmeric or resveratrol, that's actually, you've already taken a lot of those toxins out. And again, another thing that I worked on was getting the lectin out of any of the seeds, oils, or plants, because lectin is something that's toxic. It can help you kill cancer cells, but too much of it can actually kill you. Sure. And can cause a lot of side effects. So I did a process which gets rid of all the toxins in the cold press method so that you're only left with the nutrients. Because when I started understanding that, oh my gosh, so you could have an apple, but it's actually toxic to the system and has some nutrients. But the problem is when it goes into the system, if you don't chew it all down or process it right, or your body's not working, you're just putting the toxins through that apple into the body.
Right.
So you can really do the right sourcing, which I think is one of the brilliance of the right companies and right manufacturing is to know the sources. If you can get the right sources from the right places, for example, if you get Chernobyl happened in Ukraine, right? Yep. If you order...
If everyone through a quick review, Chernobyl was a nuclear event, just to be clear with everybody.
Horrible. And in the place where Chernobyl happened and actually in the cities around it, plants don't grow the same. It's impacted a lot of different things because nuclear bombs, of course, can do a lot of different things that are negative. Yeah. Well, you don't want to order, let's say you're a manufacturing plant and you're working for nutraceuticals, but you decide to order a seed or a plant or an oil because it's so much cheaper from a place that is not the best place. Or let's say your water supply, for example, has fluoride and you're making gel packs and different things, or your water supply is not safe or it's not been cleaned. Well, then you're actually making something that you're putting in a product that is going to hurt people instead of help them. So you really got to make sure whatever you're putting in your body, I don't care if it's the food you're eating or if it's a supplement, which are needed because you need to microdose or put in these good things into your body and not just negative. And you need to know that you're doing that. You've got to make sure it comes from the right sources. And I always say this, if you get a fish out of a sewage and you eat it, how great was that fish for you?
Sure.
Because we always talk about halibut or salmon. So let's say you get salmon out of a sewage. Your wife brings it home. She cooks it, puts it on a plate. You're like, wow, this is good. It may taste good, right? first of all, your wife would never do that, but I'm just using it as an example. She would never do that, but I'm using it as an example. So here's what I tell people, but yet you'll put something in your mouth that you have no idea where it came from and you don't even think about it. So when people tell me organic, just so you know, that for me is not always the answer. Because if you tell me it's organic, but I don't know exactly where it came from, it may be organic and I didn't use pesticides, but it may not be the best source.
Yeah.
So I do think that, and I know that overwhelms people, and I don't like to overwhelm people. So I just want to say this. If you know the companies and you know where you're getting your products or you know where you're getting your foods, then you know that what you're putting in your body has a better chance of healing the body. Because really, food can either destruct your body or it can heal your body. Mm-hmm. And that's a fact. And if you disagreed with me on that, I would say, we'd have a lengthy discussion on it because it's so important.
Let me back this up a little bit. And everything that I've talked about on this show and with the people that have come on, and Michelle has mentioned to me quite a few times, she's like, look, you got to live your life, right? You can't always, like you mentioned before, you can't always keep the junk food from your kids and things of that nature, right? So, well, I'm not trying to make people feel bad, saying you have to do the best of this, you have to do the best of that. What I'm telling everyone is to look, do your homework, okay? So now, for example, I will not buy a computer that is not Microsoft, Apple, or Google. And the reason why is because I know that they go through the highest, more rigorous testing for antiviral, anti-spam, etc. So I know that my devices are going to be secure. Right. If I buy a Dell or an HP or another, like a Lenovo, that's a third party. And yes, they do but every one of them, for example, comes with McAfee built on top of it. They don't have the software built inside. So just so everyone knows, again, give you an analysis here, Norton antivirus or McAfee, they've all been hacked. They're the reason why those three major computer companies have it already built in, because it's part of the operating system. Okay? But when they sell a third party, they pull it out because it's proprietary. So what I'm telling everyone is go do your research on the food sourcing companies that you feel comfortable with, because you should look at how do they grow their food? What type of soil do they use? How is it manufactured? If let's say someone has a tree nut allergy, for example, is it manufactured in a plant with tree nuts? Blah, blah, blah. So once you pick your companies, you're good. But,
I agree.
But do your homework up front. And this is what all this is about. And that's why when you give recommendations on, hey, there's certain companies we recommend, here's why. That's what we're bringing out to everyone, because they don't know. No one knows where to find it because no one's talking about it. And that's what kills me the most.
That's a great way to say it. Because to overwhelm people cannot be the purpose of this call or my life or your life. And I get that. It needs to be to provide solutions, which is, I'm going to go back to detox.
Sure.
That's why if you can detox with an orthosilicate or a zeolite, there's different companies out there that I think use my formulas. The problem is once I produce a formula in a lab, it's good and bad. People will use it, which is good. But a lot of times scientists like me, they won't compensate because but you know this, a law of life, what you do has to be for society and it can't just be for compensation. Sure. So there are some great products out there. I personally have changed the formulas.
Let me tap into that last comment real quick. So this way everyone knows, this conversation that's happening right now is completely two people getting together, talking about stuff that we're passionate about and that we care about for the betterment of people who want to listen to it. There's no paid advertisements. There's no one sponsoring the show. This is all out of our own pocket time, energy, money, efforts, etc. And that's a really important point that's separating me and you from everyone else.
I agree. I think that if you really care about this topic that we're talking about, it has to be that way. You have to be willing to do things that are just helping people so that they understand. Just like everyone helps, people help me, people help you. So we all need to share our knowledge. But if you detox and you supplement with some of these different gels and oils, and turmeric is one of my favorites. Curcumin, I feel like everyone needs to do it. I'm just going to say this, olive leaf extract and I don't sell olive leaf extract. I don't license it. It's really important. I have some products that I did patents around with that, but there's all kinds of great products around olive leaf. It's kind of hard to find, but it's a great product. And the oregano, of course, is one of my all-time favorites. Another thing I think that helps with the body is colostrum. I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but I'm just going to tell you your mind and your stomach, your prebiotics, probiotics, colostrum, it's really important. When people have GI problems, it impacts the cells in the blood. It impacts depression and everything else. So you've got to make sure you're just doing some basic things. And if you ask me, how much does all of that cost in a month? I think to have the right supplements and take the right, like for me, I probably spend around $100 a month. And if you said to me, well, and I don't have to spend that much, but I try to get things that I really know are going to work.
Yeah. The premium stuff. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. And because even when I make a product, if a company licenses it from me or uses it, I don't get unlimited amounts of that product. Right. I know that sounds crazy. I still have to buy the product, but sometimes they'll send me product for a year. But it's really important. And I would just say another easy solution for people when they're detoxing is if you will use oils in a bath with the sea salts and the Epsom salts, and use a fair amount of that, it really does help the body detox. You know, your skin is your largest organ, and it can help get all of those out. I think people forget that. And actually, bath, and some people say to me, well, I don't take a bath. Well, then take one once a week, because it really will help the body. And then I know, your apple cider vinegars and your hydrogen peroxide, there's different solutions there. We could talk about it all day long, but I think making sure that you're focusing not just by taking products, but mentally about getting those bad things out and clearing your brain and your stomach and your overall body is very important. And if you reach a point where you're going through a detox process and you don't feel great about what you're eating, go back to the basics about eating things that are just like, for example, a lean protein, right? Mm-hmm. Because sometimes when you're detoxing, your raw vegetables are harder for your body to process.
Yes.
I know they really are. And I know people, like, if you ate a lot of lettuce, it could actually cause even more problems. And I love lettuce, but you got to just make sure, because it's counterintuitive. Like, a lot of times I'll be like, I want to eat celery or I want to eat lettuce. And then I realize I just need basic protein while I'm trying to really detox my stomach. Mm-hmm. And I just want to make sure that people know that. I think I actually have a book that will come out this year that focuses a lot on detox. Or by next year. I haven't talked to you about that, but yeah, I spent a lot.
Did we hear it here first? I love that stuff.
You did.
Nice.
I just can't decide how to release it, but it's, we named it Cure the Causes, because it's just about getting to the cause of things instead of, not claiming to cure anything, just getting to the cause of why we have issues. And I always focus not just on the body, but also on the mind and, the spirit and the soul. And I want to say this. So we know now that when someone dies, that energy, their spirit, does not just leave the room. It comes out, it comes into the environment. They can measure it for 7 seconds. So basically your soul. And you guys could look it up. I think Oxford was the first one that discovered that, but I think that's very interesting because people have experienced a lot of pain when people die, but their energy's still there. What they don't know is where does that energy go after that, but energy is so important. And, these are our houses, but we've got this spirit in here. And I think that's definitely what drives a mother in protecting her children and finding the answer. And that energy, that spirit is more intelligent and stronger than any degree.
Yeah. What do you think the minimum hours of sleep where people can really be effective? Interested, because there's a big studies on sleep nowadays. There's anyone in the natural space is like sleep. That's where you do your dumping. That's where your cortisol levels come down and reset, et cetera, et cetera. So, but where's the minimal to optimal ranges?
You need to have a correlation. A lot of your studies will just look at like a mass number of people, but they don't look at the details statistically. So for example, within a group of 1,000 people, are there any people that are manic, right? Or hypomanic? And hypomanic means that you have more energy and that you're constantly, your neurotransmitters are at a higher level. Those kinds of people don't need as much as sleep. Mm-hmm. So some of your big sleep studies do not correlate that in, but overall, usually your adults need 6 to 8 hours of sleep. To really be, get the sleep that they need. And some people with the DNA and the blood type and their ability and their neurotransmitters need more than that, 9 or 10 hours. And I will say this, people that go through extreme amounts of stress or fatigue, like let's say now during COVID, this is stressing people out. And I've had a lot of my friends say, I'm just so tired. I want to sleep. And it's because of the stress. So stress will burn through your endorphins. They will really impact your body, where your body has to sleep to regenerate. Because you probably know this, when you sleep, you're helping your body heal.
Yeah.
And it's, in some format, Scott, there's no other alternative to that, right? You have to sleep. And so I say 6 to 8 hours. Give you one more example. Men that are in special forces or in the military, and their adrenaline's going because it has to. And we know now that a lot of those people that are like professional athletes or in the military, they're made a little bit different. We have all these words that we categorize people as, but they're gifted in particular areas, and they don't always need as much sleep because of how their bodies are wired. But after they get back from like a mission, or let's say they're gone for a 3-6 month period, they need to take that time to refuel their body. But when they're in those environments, very similar to when I'm in an environment where maybe I'm in 14 countries in 2 weeks, right? You can get through that period, but it is going to break down your body. So sleep is really, really important. And overall, you need 6 to 8 hours. But there are people, and I'm sure you know some of them, because a lot of entrepreneurs and people that work really hard don't sleep that much. And in some aspects, it's because maybe they don't need quite as much, because maybe they're kind of hypomanic. And, again, what that means is they're not manic, but they're hardwired in a way that their brain's constantly going and thinking. And so they can actually get more done. And one of the downsides to being like an entrepreneur or a really driven person, there's a lot of good points to it. One of the downsides is people that are like probably you and sometimes me, and other people, they don't understand people that do need as much sleep. Like if someone tells you, I have to sleep 8 to 9 to 10 hours a night, you might say, well, I think you could get by with less because your body maybe can. Right. But because you're hardwired different, right? And more of those studies are coming out, which is why, as a scientist, I'm really glad that my background was at first psychology, because I think, psychiatry and psychology were one of the first sciences with Freud and all the stuff that was developed. And a lot of people don't know that, but it really was your basic science that came out. And then a lot of other things came out of that. And I always feel guilty when I say I don't have to have 8 hours of sleep, because then I don't want to make people feel bad, but I usually don't sleep 8 hours.
Well, before, not so much as of late. My wife will completely attest to that and be like, about a month ago, I was this way, but I shifted again a month later into now. But I was somewhere like 6.5 hours, and I was fine. I was good. What I'm finding was that because of my drive to go to bed at night, it was really hard to calm the brain down. And I've been working on breathing techniques and just rhythmic techniques to do that. And it has helped significantly, profoundly. But at the same time, I'm like, just because of time, the way time works, it just keeps moving. There is no past, future. There's just time. I want to fall asleep and I want to wake up. So if I want 6 hours or 8 hours, I want that to be my rest time, and then wake up and be productive again. Like most people, they don't want the 15-minute lull of trying to fall asleep. They want that time, that REM.
Yeah.
So as of late, I've been doing a little bit more sleeping, like 7.5 hours versus like the 6.5. So I'm getting a little bit, like another hour more. And I'm like, okay, this is good. But I take a little bit of smidge of melatonin just to kind of kick it in a little bit, just to kind of help me get through. I find that when I do that, I get that extra hour. When I don't do that, I'm still up pretty early.
Oh, yeah.
So
I can't sleep by myself, but without taking like melatonin or something. And I hate to admit that, but it's the truth. Let me put it this way. I can't fall asleep like that. You're right. I'll have to lay there. And I'm like you, I just don't have the time, in my opinion, to do that. But I have, one of the things that does work for me, just to tell you, is I've just started doing this. I will start thinking of all the positive things I'm going to do the next day.
Yeah.
And all the great things that are going to happen and what I'm going to accomplish to help people. And that actually, and then I literally talk through it, and that actually will put me to sleep. And I've heard people say that before. And even as a psychologist, we've told people that, but that does help. But I also take melatonin. Yeah.
I listen to Dr. Wayne Dwyer as much as I can. As of recently, the silence has been a lot better than actually listening to something. I really have just really become very, very fond of his teachings and what he's done and just his message overall. So it's been very calming and soothing at the same time. Well, listen, I'm going to start wrapping this up for us, but I want to ask a couple pivotal questions that we always leave everyone with in the audience with. You've obviously done your homework. You have over 20 years of educational and professional experience, and very, very smart, very knowledgeable, very open. How do you keep yourself up on it? What do you choose to use to keep learning? Because you said it best in our pre-discussion. I said it with you, but the more you know, the less you realize, or the more you realize that you don't know. And so humble us a little bit with how you educate yourself.
So I have continued to stay in schools to get degrees. I'm finishing my pharmaceutical product development certification, as well as I told you the nutrition, and just finished the nanobiotechnology. But I would say how I really educate myself and stay up on it is by listening to I listen a lot to mothers, just so you know, because it's interesting that you're talking to me, because the mothers are the ones that have done the most research. And I listen, and then I'll go in and I speed read, and I have a eidetic memory. So I will read stuff as fast as I can, like if you give me a paper, and then I'll try to download. So what that means is I may read 50 pages and I get a paragraph out of that of what I want to remember. And then I will use that to help me work on patents and develop things that I think can help us as we develop as a society and as a generation. And so that's, but I would say my passion, I would say I listen equally to a mother that's done research on a particular topic for her child, or a father, as I do from a college professor. But I do continue to stay in school. And if you ask me why, I want to know the latest information so that I can develop even more to help us even more understand how we can, we know we can live to be 120 to 130. But we want that 120 to 130 years to be a good time, right. A good quality of life. Not painful. Not painful. Yeah. And I get down, we all get down. We all sometimes think, all of us sometimes think, I wish I was smarter, or I wish I knew more. So I think by listening, I learn the most. And I think a lot of women are like this. And I don't mean to categorize women and men, but I know for me, I've always wanted to make people happy or to please them, but I've had to learn and to continue to learn that sometimes my path is not to please everyone. Sure. Sometimes my path is to take a stance, and maybe people don't like me, which is why I respect what you're doing. I think that you're taking a positive stance, but also willing to be open to make changes that can help the most people. And I think finally we're awakening to understand that it's not just the United States, where we have a great country, a wonderful country, but we need to be open to all these other things that happen, even like in your tribes in Africa. How do they heal someone that's sick? Right. They do a lot of energy healing.
You know what I would think about all the time, and I really would ponder this thought, and I'd come back and say, look, our present understanding of what medicine is minuscule compared to how long medicine's been practiced throughout the ages.
Oh, absolutely.
So you're telling me that when we were going out and killing animals with spears, that people weren't tearing ACLs and meniscus and everything. What were they doing? They don't have the technology then to have a exact measurement and screws and drills to go put it back. They knew through energy how to heal an ACL and a meniscus. Yep. And that's my point. And when I really thought about that. I said, my gosh, we have it all wrong, truly all wrong. Because
we don't want to accept the energy healing. Like I for me, my great grandparents were shamans. They were Indian, and we like people think that it's not typical medicine to do energetic healing or energetic work, and the truth is that's what nanotechnology is.
That's all it is.
When we go into a lab, that's all it is. That's a really great big word to talk about, basically using different types of energy and scientific methods to alter a molecule or to alter a substance.
When people think of nanotechnology, they think of little microbots moving around with arms and legs. Yeah. It's not what it is.
So my question to, one last thing, I really want to say this. So we can do that as scientists and make human monoclonal antibodies that are targeted to go in and kill and charge $500,000 a year, but per patient. But we don't understand that you can actually do that with people in general and not just the cells in a body.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I mean, actually, if you really think about it, it's almost humorous that we're not willing to accept that it works. Now, I know religious organizations, spirituality, I think they do accept that in a certain path. And I was raised in a very spiritual home. But I also think that when we start saying it, like healing, it's just for some reason hard for people to accept those words. Yeah. I don't know why.
That's why I brought up specifically as I keep learning, and I'm not by any means a master. I have a lot to do I don't have a lot to do. I do understand. I have just a lot to realize, a lot to realize with the NLP.
Yeah.
It's there. And I've already started figuring things out where I do have a family member who has what they would consider an issue with a certain part of their anatomy. Well, I can go in there and, we call it certain things, but just boom.
Yeah.
And refocus that energy. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, okay, boom, they're done. It's over. And because we've not been conditioned to believe that or understand how that works, everyone has to say, well, what's the science behind it? What if there is no science? What if you just got comfortable with being comfortable?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is.
Science behind that. I personally think there is science behind that.
Well, what really, really piqued my interest a moment ago is that when you just said that the Oxford study recognizes and identified that there's energy that leaves the body when someone passes and is existing for 7 seconds in the room, they just don't know where it goes. Well, it's stardust, frankly. Okay. And now, I'm not saying that the stars in the universe and all that kind of stuff. Actually, I am going to say stars in the universe, but it disperses back. Where it exactly goes, well, it's omnipresent. So what is time? What is our thought? I mean, it's just there. And so when people think about this one point, and not to get philosophical here about past and future, there is no past and future. There's just now. And as soon as we understand that, then we kind of already answer that question. We don't have to do all the research and science behind it. There's just now. It just becomes part of us.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right, because it's just now, and anything you actually could say anything else that's not just now is not real, right?
Right. Exactly. It's an illusion.
Right. And that's why you can get rid of the things that the past, the present. But I love the fact that I do feel like science is catching up a little bit to those thought processes finally. And I'm not sure.
What I think is happening is I think that they're not just catching up, but they're trying to figure out a way of how to integrate and monetize. That's what I'm afraid of. That's
what I think. That's why I was trying to say to you earlier that we also have to be careful about that world as well.
Yeah, because exactly.
Now it's because I don't know if you know this, but I want to tell you this. So you're marketing like analysis in like Asia. Like I did a consulting project where I looked just at China, but Europe and Asia, they're more into the alternative and the supplements, right? And to the different types of healing and everything. So the United States is starting to understand that. So we're, moving things over there a lot. So you've got to make sure that we hold accountable, not just the pharmaceutical industry, but we honestly are honest and open about the whole industry. There's going to be really good companies and really good people. And you're still, this is my opinion, you're still going to have that 10, 20% of people that in their mind, they don't have the overall good of our healthcare and our wellness in society. They simply have the power and money aspect. And to me, to really, that's where I just want to absolutely empower all the mothers and fathers and people out there that are seriously seeking what's best for their kids and for others, because they want what's best. There's no ulterior motive there.
Right.
The problem with a lot of these companies, and I know we touched upon this, is they'll take a formula and then they'll start making money from all these people. And then once they reach like a $10 million mark, they'll change the formula. They'll change the sourcing. They won't make it the same because they just want to make money. It's really, I don't know how we're going to prevent that, as I don't know what to do about that, actually.
Yeah. Well, here it is. The final word is yours. How would you like to leave everybody?
I just want to say thank you for the people that are empowering and supporting wellness and healthcare when it's not just what you've heard since you were little that's typical, and not just what's coming directly out of a doctor's mouth, because doctors are amazing. But as a person that this is your body and your children are yours to take care of, you're the expert. There is no one that loves or cares about you or your children as much as you do. So when you talk about experts like doctors and scientists, the truth is you are the expert of your body. There's no one else. And so you've got to do what you really think is best. And that means listening and learning from other people. I think it's extremely important. But I think also you listen to your gut and your instinct and your discernment, and you pay attention to the energy and how you feel, and you do what's right. Even if a person that's an expert tells you that that's not what's right for you, I feel like deep down people know what they need to do if they really look for it. And so I think that's something people have to understand and feel empowered by and follow. And if you do that, I think you can live to be 120, 130 years old if you want to, because we know as scientists you can. But I think you've got to be the expert of your body, because a doctor sees 30, 40 patients a day, and they have a lot of expertise. And even someone like me, I do a lot of phone calls. I spend a lot of time answering questions. But in the end, no one's going to love your child or you as much as you do. And no one's going to care about it. Just like if a cleaning service comes in, they're never going to clean the house the way the woman that runs that house wants it cleaned, right? Because that's the person that it's their house. So make sure you understand that and accept that. And I think once you do, that's a turning point for your entire families. Yeah,
I agree. Well said. And thank you. So everyone, real quick, I'm going to break this down for everyone. So again, we have Dr. Christina Rahm in front of us. Cure the Cause is the name of her book. You can find her at drchristinarahm.com. All that will be in the podcast notes as well as in the YouTube video. So it's all going to be here. Please reach out to her. Look, everyone knows that I do my homework and that I try to structure things that are atypical, that are different, and that we need to be woken up about. This conversation happened out of two people who care about people and who want to make an impact and a difference, because we just see too many things. And the thing is, let me teach everyone something real quick. If you simply say the word true before a statement, your body is forced. It can't lie. It's kind of like Jim Carrey in Liar Liar. The pen is blue when he's holding a red pen. A blue pen. He can't say red when it's a blue pen. So what we're saying today is true. And if you ask yourself, do I really need this? If you say true, do I really need this? Your body will let you know right away. Listen to the first thoughts that hit your subconscious. That is the answer, not what your brain thinks. Your brain is a lazy piece of meat. Think with your subconscious, not with your brain. And with that, I want to thank the 360 Nation for joining in. Dr. Rahm, amazing. I cannot wait to share you with the world through our platform and the audience. And we'll see you in the next one. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much, Scott. Boom, bye-bye. Boom, boom. Bang. Oh, my gosh. I just hope people listen, because it's true. If they will. I'm telling you, I'm getting text messages from my friends, and they're saying, oh, my gosh, have you tried this? Have you done that? Or how did you find this person? Or it's working. Thank you again. We'll see you soon. Okay. Have a great weekend. You
too. Thank you so much. Tell your wife I said hi. I loved the story about her. It made me cry.
Oh, thank you.
It reminded me of stuff I've done. Yeah. Anyway, thank you.
See ya. Take care.